Hello, you're watching DD News and I'm Preeti presenting Late Edition tonight. The idea of migrating to a foreign land, eyeing better opportunities, is not new. Hopes of a flourishing career and a safe future in the foreign land has turned into a nightmare for some 10,000 Indians stranded in Saudi Arabia. Today, they have a hope of a different kind, hope to be rescued by the Indian government as they struggle even for a single morsel of food a day. The Indian government is toiling hard to come to the rescue of more than 10,000 migrant workers in Saudi Arabia whose jobs have been laid down owing to the downsizing by the Saudi companies to brace up with the economic crisis resulting from falling global oil prices. In a statement in both the Houses of Parliament, the External Affairs Minister also informed Parliament that 5 camps have been organized in Saudi Arabia for the stranded Indians. The Saudi government has been urged to grant the stranded workers emergency exit visas at the earliest. The Indian Embassy in Riyadh and the Consulate in Jeddah has organized food for the workers.
Yet another humanitarian crisis arising in a Gulf country. Over 10,000 Indian workers in Saudi Arabia are facing severe food shortage due to financial hardship after losing their jobs. India has ordered its mission in the Gulf nation to provide all possible assistance to the stranded citizens. External Affairs Minister Sushma Swaraj assured in Rajya Sabha that the government is seized of the matter and is planning accordingly.
आज सदन के माध्यम से देश को कहना चाहती हूं कि भारत का कोई भी श्रमिक यदि बाहर बेरोजगार है तो वो भूखा नहीं सोएगा। भारत सरकार इसकी जिम्मेदारी लेती है कि उसको खाना पहुंचाएगी, लेकिन केवल खाना पहुंचाने तक नहीं। अगर वो वहाँ बेरोजगार है और दूसरी जगह कोई काम नहीं मिल रहा, अगर दूसरी कंपनी में काम मिल जाए तो बहुत अच्छी बात। अगर काम नहीं मिल रहा है और वो स्वदेश लौटना चाहता है तो हम उसको सकुशल स्वदेश वापस लेकर आएंगे, ये भी मैं आपको आश्वासन देता हूं।
Swaraj appealed to over 30 lakh Indians in Saudi Arabia to help their fellow brothers and sisters, asserting that there is nothing mightier than the collective will of the Indian nation. Her initial response came following a tweet by a man who said around 800 Indians are starving for the last 3 days in Jeddah and sought her intervention. Thousands of workers are being provided food by the Indian consulate in Jeddah. 2,450 Indians are in financial difficulty after losing their jobs as many companies have closed down in recent times. And once again, Minister of State for External Affairs V.K. Singh will spearhead the mission to assess the severity of the food crisis. India will then take a call for remedial measures, including possible return of stranded people. Large number of Indians have lost their jobs in Saudi Arabia in last few months due to economic slowdown triggered by low oil prices.
All right, to evaluate the crisis, we have with us in the studio Mr. A.R. Ghanshyam. He is former senior diplomat, and Dr. Zakir Hussain. He's a research fellow at ICWA. Thank you so much, both of you, for joining us on Late Edition tonight. Mr. Ghanshyam, I'll start with you. What do you make of the crisis? Because this is for the first time that evacuations are being done by the Indian government in peace times. Earlier, when we've seen evacuations being done, they've been done when the countries are struck by a strife or a disaster, a natural disaster or a political crisis, but this is for the first time that evacuations are being done owing to the economic crisis.
Let me take you back just a few years. 2011, the government of Saudi Arabia introduced a program called Nitakat. The objective of this program was to increase the number of Saudi Arabian citizens working in Saudi companies. The number was very, very low. If you look at the population of Saudi Arabia, about 30 million, about 8.5 million are expatriates. And the biggest group is Indian, which is today more than 3 million. That's about 30 lakhs. At that time, it became a huge crisis for us because we had 3 million people and we didn't know how many of them would be sent back home. We were not sure how many of them have visas which are valid, how many of them have jobs which are permanent, how many of them need to change them. In the final analysis, what happened was, out of the 3 million Indians, 30 lakh Indians, about 90,000 came back. 500,000 got their stay permits renewed. About another 500,000 changed their jobs and moved into other jobs. All this happened when nearly 200,000 Saudi companies closed down in 2014. So government of India managed it. it was much bigger crisis than today. At that time, I recall that even Indian schools across Saudi Arabia became counters for receiving Indians who were stranded, and food was being supplied to all of them for so long. And finally, we had to work with the government of Saudi Arabia, because the government of Saudi Arabia did not have the official numbers to release the exit permits, to process the cases. So volunteers from India and from the expatriate community and Saudi population, they together worked in Saudi Arabia. That's how we were able to resolve the crisis. And today you are talking about 10,000 Indians. And what we dealt with in 2013 was much bigger. That is the first thing that I want to say, that the government of India is very well equipped to manage anything of this kind. And 10,000 evacuation in peacetime is not a big show. Be that as it may, the speed with which we act is what is very, very important, and the government of India seems to have acted almost with lightning speed. Because today, thanks to that Nitakat program, we have the data bank. We know the name and address of every Indian who is in Saudi Arabia. Each one of them was registered. Today we can track them down, we have their photographs, we have their residence address. We checked all this during that Nitakat thing. And it's one of the most powerful data banks that we have. All that you need to do is operate it and regularize it, link it possibly with Aadhaar, and you have a case in hand. And in particular, why is this? Last time it was Nitakat, because Saudiization was the objective. But this time, why is it that 10,000 people want to come back? And the reason is this. What is the source of income for Saudi Arabia? It's oil and gas. 80% of the revenue of government of Saudi Arabia is oil. 45% of the GDP of Saudi Arabia is oil. 80% of the export revenue of Saudi Arabia is oil and gas. Just a few years ago, it was $150 a barrel. Today, it is $40 a barrel. You can imagine what has happened to the capacity of the Saudi government to run its own affairs within the country. It is bound to make a difference. So, some of us have lost jobs because companies have wound up. So,
yes, Dr. Zakir, I would want you to take on from where he left. He's already saying it was in 2001 when the Operation Nitakat, it was the program wherein we saw that this crisis was in the making since then, 2011, 2013. But I would want you to evaluate for us, could this have been avoided in the sense, because we've seen that this crisis is spreading, is brewing up in Kuwait and other Gulf nations as well. He's talking of how oil prices then were at $100, but today they're falling at $40, which is still not confirmed whether they will improve or not from here on. Your take on that?
Listen, that we have to understand the category of laborers going from India to or anywhere to the Gulf countries, oil-rich countries, which are dependent, as he said, on oil income. And bulk of the job are created in construction sector, where blue collar workers are employed, and these companies are dependent on the expenditures of the government. They are just like PSUs, public sector units, though they are private, but they are highly dependent on government expenditure plans. And as we know that in 2016 budget, Saudi Arabia has presented a deficit of $100 billion, which is perhaps more than that by looking the crisis which is coming in the country. And on the other side, the new Deputy Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman has introduced a plan which is known as Vision 2030, in which he has said that Saudi Arabia is going to live without oil in the coming 20 or 25 years. Under that, this is one aspect, and the other aspect is that Saudi Arabia itself is facing high level of unemployment, particularly among youth and female. It is said that they are facing unemployment at a rate of 40 to 45%, and general unemployment is 20% unofficially. So they are facing a pressing from both the side, income curtailment and other side job creation for the their own nationals. That's why they started the process of localization. In this situation, our government should have realized the looming crisis. Because as you said in your introduction that the crisis which were earlier was generated by political
reasons.
Now it is economic reason, and this is caused by this slowdown in oil prices, which is going to stay because of shale gas and other introduction of new players in the market, such as Iran, Iraq, Libya, so and Russia also. So oil price is not going to spike up in near future, at least for, to my understanding, for 5 to 6 years. And while the oil consuming countries, particularly China and India, are not so their economies are not so vibrant to absorb oil. So this crisis is the beginning of the long-term syndrome in the Gulf, and we have to take a long-term measures, medium-term measures to manage our migrants there. We have to develop a cushion how to rescue our workers from such type of crisis. And other problem which we feel that they are guest workers. Today or tomorrow they have to come back. So government should take, not only rescue them, but also make a plan for the return migrants, how they can be absorbed in the economy and society.
We'll talk about it in a while from now, but Mr. Ghanshyam, apart from this economic crisis which has come up with this crisis faced by the Indians there in Saudi Arabia, there is also the question of the treatment of the expats there in the Gulf nations. Not long, it was when an example of a maid had come to the forefront, wherein Kasturi Munirathinam, whose right hand was cut off by the employer in Riyadh when she wanted to flee the employer's house. That was one case, but we've seen many such cases of ill treatment being reported there. You've been a former diplomat yourself. Tell us more about that, and what exactly is the solution to this?
Well, what you are saying is correct, but we must also look at the total numbers. When we started the boom in 1973, there were a few 100,000 Indians who had gone to the Middle East for jobs. Today we have 80 lakhs. The number is growing. And they are growing there because they are not able to get a job in India, and they are able to get a better job. That is the belief, and that is the hope, that is the aspiration, and they go there. And not all of them are going to work in 5-star hotels. Many of them will be in construction sites, and the working conditions are difficult. The average temperature in Saudi Arabia is well above that of India, even in the worst times of summer. So people are prepared to work for that because they get a little better money. And for looking after people in distress, there is a regime which is already available. It's not that it's not there. Every embassy has the fund and also has physical capacity to accommodate maids in distress and anyone who is in trouble. And there are helplines which are available 24 hours.
But then what went wrong here?
You see, when you are dealing with 8 million people, you will not be in a position to deal with every one of them at every point in time. It's a question of time lag. If a problem has been identified, if in 24 hours the person has been taken over, then the job is done. You cannot say that it has taken 24 years to reach, because country like Saudi Arabia is also huge. It's almost a third of India's in terms of size. And the embassy is sitting in Riyadh, and there is a consulate in Jeddah. It takes a little time for them to reach the spot. In fact, every month there are meetings which take place where people are welcome to come and voice their grievances. Every embassy in the Middle East has this monthly meetings and weekly meetings. And anyone, it's not that you have to take an appointment to go there. You can go there on that specified day. Normally it is done on a Friday because it's all closed on Fridays. And the ambassador, he's himself present in that particular day of the week to listen to each Indian national who has a complaint, who has a suggestion. There is a system which is in existence, which is operating. But as I say, that everything cannot be taken for granted.
Are you saying it is the lack of awareness among the Indians there who are not aware of these systems available?
Partly.
If we have a kafla system there, we also have a sanad system there,
yes,
against it. But then again the question arises, are the Indians there aware of it? What needs to be done?
Everyone who goes there is aware of it, and each one is supposed to register himself with the database of the embassy there. Some of them don't do it, and constantly the ambassador himself and the consular officers keep telling the expatriates, please register yourselves, please register yourselves, please register your contracts. If you see the number of contracts which have actually been signed by Indians in any country in the Middle East, and the number of contracts that have been registered in the embassy, you will find the difference. There will be a big gap between the two, because people are a little scared that they may lose the job if they do it. But that is the only way we can recognize.
We can come out.
Come out to help them. But if we don't know who the hell it is, how will we go and help him or her?
Right, we'll take that thought forward. But at present, we're heading for a short commercial break. In late edition, we're discussing the crisis of the Indians stranded in Saudi Arabia. Stay with us.
प्रधानमंत्री ग्राम सड़क योजना ने हम गांव वालों के लिए तरक्की के रास्ते खोल दिए।
सड़क के गड्ढों की फोटो खींच रहे हो? कोई खास बात है क्या?
अरे काका, मेरे मोबाइल फोन में मेरी सड़क ऐप है, जिससे प्रधानमंत्री ग्राम सड़क से जुड़ी कोई भी जानकारी सरकार तक भेजी जा सकती है। सड़क से जुड़े सुझाव या शिकायत पर सरकार वाजिब कार्यवाही करती है।
प्रधानमंत्री ग्राम सड़क से जुड़ी कोई भी बात, मेरी सड़क एंड्रॉइड ऐप अब हर पल मेरे साथ।
देखिए, बच्चा बीमार भी हो तो भी उसे टीके के लिए हर बार ले जाइए। अगर किसी वजह से दूसरी जगह भी जाना पड़े तो भी इसका ये जो कार्ड है, इस कार्ड को साथ ले जाए और टीके जरूर लगवाएं। 5 साल 7 बार, छूटे ना टीका एक भी बार।
Welcome back. After the break, you're watching Late Edition, and with us we have 2 guests in the studio, and we're discussing the crisis faced by the Indians in Saudi Arabia. Mr. Hussain, I'll come to you. When we headed for the break, we were talking of the crisis in the sense that Mr. Ghanshyam did tell us that there is a grievance system to redress the grievances of the expats in the foreign lands. Every embassy is equipped with that. But we'll talk with the efforts by the Indian government at present. We've seen that the External Affairs Minister has taken on to the social media, and she is very active on the social media, not only this time, but earlier also on occasions we've seen her come to the rescue of the Indians abroad. Are there any specific roadblocks when we talk of the Indian efforts in this particular case in Saudi Arabia?
Let me say that very honestly, what I absorbed as a scholar, I have written this book first time on Saudi Arabia published by. The response of Indian embassies, particularly where the blue collar workers are in majority, are not up to their expectation. This is the voice of thousands of Indians working there in the Gulf. But now this time, what our foreign minister has said in the parliament and the action taken, she has sent 2 ministers, V.K. Singh and M.J. Akbar, to discuss the crisis issue and all these things. It's a very proactive and enlightening thing, and it is going to encourage the confidence of Indians that Indian government is taking care of them. And this will certainly produce a positive impact on the host country's government. And what we think that systems are there, but one of the major complaints of the Indians working there is that when they go there, they say that you are here to work, not to complain. This is one of the major crises which found even during the Nitakas. the volunteers worked more than the embassy staff. This is well written and recorded things. What we need at this juncture, which is very frequent, crisis is very frequent in this, because politically they are volatile, economically they are again going to see a problem. So what we think that Indian government should plan its migration in a very systematic manner. What kind of jobs available there? What kind of labor should be sent there? How much laborers should be sent there? What restrictions should be imposed on the agents? And what policies Indian government should pursue with the Saudi government, and especially with the private persons who own the workers, that could protect the interest of Indian workers. And we can, in this direction, we can see the steps taken by the Philippines.
Yes.
It has taken a very positive steps and signed agreement. And let me say that Saudi Arabia is the only country which has not signed manpower agreement, nor GCC, which is hosting around 7 to 8 million Indian workers there, and total around 20 million. They have not.
So government to government efforts have to be put in place, rejuvenated
and revamped. And Indian government should develop more confidence to bargain with them. We have to understand, we should understand that these countries need laborers. They are not doing anything good for us. What we understand, they are giving us jobs and all. The Saudi government and other governments several times have acknowledged the contribution of Indian workers in building their economies and societies. So we have to develop that confidence and that bargaining position. So a working, there is no in these countries there is no wage rate, but working wage, living wage should be negotiated with them. And during our Prime Minister's visit to Saudi Arabia in April,
yes.
An agreement has been signed to deal with the blue-collar workers, because blue-collar workers are more suffer than others because they don't know language, they are very hesitant, they are put in labor camps, and they don't have passports with them. Their passports are taken by the employers. And why they take the passports? Because they have also their reasons, because it is not totally out of that. Sometimes workers escape. That's why they keep the passport also. But many are doing, who are in the household sector, they are doing excesses, particularly with these female household workers. So it is time that India should understand that sending labor is not a charity, but it is a strength of Indian economy and labor population to negotiate with them.
All right, Mr. Ghanshyam, I want your comments in here. We've seen that the efforts, special efforts are made by the government here to reach out to the diaspora in different parts of the world. We've seen that during Prime Minister's visits abroad. He has made special efforts to reach out to the Indians wherever he goes. And this time around, we've seen that the Ministry of External Affairs is also making all-out efforts to help the Indians whenever they are in distress. We've seen that happen on earlier occasions also, and this time as well. What do you make of this diaspora diplomacy, as we could call it? How promising is that?
First and foremost, I think you must understand the picture from both sides. I have actually traveled in Saudi Arabia and seen what the government of India does, and spoken to many Indian workers there, not just in Saudi Arabia, all the countries there. I used to look after that region for a while in my previous engagement. I find that there is a proximity between the diaspora and the Indian establishments there, the embassies and the consulates. And most of the people, expatriates who have been educated and are taking over white-collar jobs, they have established a rapport with the embassy. But the blue-collared ones who have come in more as laborers, they are uncomfortable. It's like going to a police station in India, going to an embassy there. That feeling we had tried to develop, insecurity, because many of them have outlived their visas. Many of them are without visas. So there are problems there also. So we have tried to link up with them in the past, but exceptions don't make rules. So we cannot take a few cases here and there and generalize them as this is the entire situation. And labor market is competitive. We are not the only ones who are looking for jobs there. There are other countries who are looking for jobs. There are nationals of other countries who are ready to work for lesser pay scales than Indians, but still the Middle East prefers Indian nationality as the most preferred one.
Okay.
So that is how you find that the number of Indians who are working in the Middle East is much higher and is growing much higher. And in fact, after the Nitakat, the number of Indians actually increased in Saudi Arabia. It should have reduced, but actually it increased because other nationalities of other countries were replaced by Indians, by the Saudi citizens and Saudi government. But coming to the brass tacks, this is not a crisis because it has taken it is an accumulation of 10,000 over a period of time. It is not overnight. If it was done in 24 hours, I would call it a crisis. It has developed over a period of time, and we have held it at 10,000. We could have gone up to 100,000. We could have waited till 100,000. That's what happened in Nitakat. But it has been arrested at the right time.
Right time.
So the government has done it. And for what do you do for people who are returning? That's government of India has to do something.
Yes,
Their rehabilitation.
that is where I would want your comments in, Dr. Hussain. Distributing food to the needy there and ensuring, sending a staff from India there to facilitate the return of those who want to come back to India. But then the question arises, what next for those returning to India? What security?
Look, the nature of migration in Gulf is totally different from what diaspora is going to other countries, especially West and US. It is a guest. They are guest worker. Today or tomorrow they have to come back. Two things are very much required to secure their life and family. Number one, that when they come back, there should be certain arrangement they can fit in economic system. Other, there should be some scheme. Schemes are there, but further it needs more. That their remittances should be utilized in a very positive manner that can establish some economic establishment in here in India. When they come back, they should be absorbed there. And second thing which I want to say that the quality and nature of work in Saudi Arabia in other oil-rich countries are totally different from India and other countries, because it is a rentier economy. Their jobs are there, they are doing there, but here they face a different set of problems which they are not accustomed.
So battle at present is half won.
Half won, and half is to settle them at home. This is quite missing, and we absorbed during Gulf crisis when thousands and thousands of workers from returned back to Kerala.
Yes.
That was that is an eye opener to our planners.
All right, thank you so much, sir, for joining us on Late Edition tonight. We have with us Mr. A.R. Ghanshyam. He is a former diplomat, and Dr. Zakir Hussain is a research fellow at the ICW. Both of them talked of and appreciated the efforts which have been made by the Indian government to ensure that the distressed Indians are rescued in Saudi Arabia. But again, the question from here on arises is of their existence here into their home country and also their relocation, rehabilitation. On that note, we'll end this edition of Late Edition. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.